Hello. This kit has been heavily requested by some users on a Discord server, so when I saw one on sale when I was in the city recently, I figured I'd pick it up and fulfill that request. Closer towards the end of the video, I'll be putting in a small review for these kits because I've done a few of these now, and I think it's fairly important that anyone who sees this video and is thinking about doing any of the Reaper Bones kits get somewhat of an idea of what to expect if they pick one of these up. Now onwards to the review that I mentioned at the start of the video. So to start off, this kit says that it's already primed in the box, so you can just take it out and paint it straight away. I'm going to immediately address the fact that this is not true. Paint doesn't stick unless you're using an airbrush, or you're patient enough to do several layers very carefully and slowly by hand. Granted, the box does say that it's perfect for use with the Reaper Master Series paints. Anyone who's used those has probably noticed that they tend to struggle doing even the most basic of things. I mainly use Vallejo Paints because they're the best that I've used, and despite the fact they are amazing paints, they are cheaper than most of the other brands. I'm not going to go out of my way to get a whole collection of what I would consider to be an inferior product, just so that I can save time waiting for primer to dry. It seems more sensible to me to use paints that'll have a better finish and have more colour variety, at a cheaper price than using the official brand paints, which don't work as well as most other brands of paint. In fact, I'd even stretch to say as far that generic brand paints you get from a hobby store could probably outperform Reaper Master Series paints on most varieties of models. The next one I want to touch on is price and materials. This model kit was impressively large, and I didn't have extremely high hopes going in, but I will say the expectations that I had, which were already low, somehow got even lower after I began painting this. When I tried to put this together and just see how it would all fit, I noticed that the model was completely off balance. The base that this thing has in the actual box doesn't seem to be balanced out correctly. It constantly topples forward because the model that's on top is much heavier than the base it's sitting on. So I had to glue a rock to the inside of the base so that it would stop toppling over, which meant that I then had to put a piece of foam on the bottom of the base so that it didn't scratch up my glass cabinet. I don't understand why I should have to take outside materials to fix a problem with the kit that shouldn't be there in the first place. Onto materials. This kit was made out of that awful, flimsy, rubbery plastic that always seems to have misshapen parts in the box no matter how new it is. I appreciate that this is made using some recycled materials, but I feel as though the tentacles were really about all that needed to be made out of that type of plastic. It makes no sense for the large, dense body of this model to be made of the same flimsy, squishy plastic that the tentacles are made of, especially when you consider the fact that the weight for this thing should not have been anywhere remotely as high as it was. Specifically what I mean by that is that I'm assuming that they want to be a bit more eco-friendly by using less materials that produce waste. If they truly wanted to aim for that goal, a good start would be making these hollow and splitting them into two parts that you glue together. I'm fairly certain that you can make an entire extra model kit with the amount of plastic that's inside of this thing. The reason I say this is because this weighs 450 grams. A Games Workshop Marathi kit weighs 425 grams. It weighs less despite the fact that the model itself is larger, it contains two models with large bases and they're highly detailed. I can't imagine how many other model kits you could probably make with the amount of plastic that's inside of this kit. These kits are made primarily for Dungeons & Dragons, and as far as I'm aware, the biggest competitor for these types of kits is Wizards of the Coast's Nolzo's Marvelous Unpainted Minis range. Now, despite the fact that they're made of the same plastic, those kits tend to have defects less often, are cheaper, and more often than not contain more models than the Reaper equivalent. On top of all that, the claim that those are ready to paint out of the box and pre-primed is in fact accurate. I have been able to paint those straight out of the box using Citadel, Vallejo, Tamiya, Army Painter, and even Reaper Master Series paints, straight out of the box. I'd say that if you had to pick between a Nolzo's kit and a Reaper kit, only pick the Reaper one if the equivalent Nolzo's kit isn't currently in stock. In summation, these kits should be primed before painting. Don't go in with high hopes, these kits are a very prime example of getting what you pay for. And buy the Nolzo's equivalents when possible. You'll get significantly more bang for your buck. One final thing to note here. This model was too large to fit inside of my light box that I currently have, and due to this and many of the other kits I have coming up being larger than this one, this will be the final kit with the old light box in the frame. I'm going to a city shortly after this video comes out, and we'll be getting the materials to assemble a new, larger light box then. I'd like to give a quick thank you to my friend Paul. Your kind words, and the kind words of what fans I have, drive me to create more and better content. Thank you for watching the video.